these ancient philosophies, looking at new philosophies, looking at new science. Again, you can go on, but I'll boil it down to the environment. So that's kind of the motivating factor, I think, in 2024. And connected to that is, it looks like, to that, oh, great,
It's working.
It's working. Wow. Finally. Thanks for your patience, folks. I've got YouTube feed is happening, and I think Facebook is on now, as is Twitter and Twitch. Great. The second thought, right there with the environment, is that vegetarian food, meatless food, plant-based food, anything like that, vegetarian food isn't automatically better for the environment. I mean, if it's in packaging, if it's plastic containers, if it's using, isn't automatically better for the environment. I mean, if it's in packaging, if it's plastic containers, if it's, let's mute that. If it's, which it will be. So I think hand in hand, there's kind of two things. Eat more plants, eat more local food, grow some food if you can, and try to really work on the packaging problem, the plastic, especially the single-use plastic. The reusable things, aluminum is primary amongst them probably, and then glass. Great, we do pretty well with aluminum and glass actually, because they retain their value. But plastic, as we all know, is a nightmare, and so it's not enough to just eat plant-based. And I address that a lot on this show. I address the vegans who live on potato chips and Oreos and gummies and, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and pasta. And you're not automatically healthy because you go plant-based. And I think this is a long-standing kind of misnomer to unpack. It's the number one thing that insincere critics always bring up. There's always somebody who says, well, I know this vegan and they just eat potato chips, so veganism is nonsense. What's more idiotic, the person living on potato chips or somebody who would look at that person and say, they represent the sum total of a billion plant-based people on planet Earth, or whatever the number is. It's probably close to that, by the way. It's probably close to 1 in 8 at this point. And probably higher if you look at flexitarians and partial vegetarians, things like that, pescatarians. Anyway, those are some thoughts, Craig. Thanks for asking. But I'd say environmental is kind of the number one. Expanding from that, for me, there's always been 3 big reasons. Environmental, my health and my energy and my optimization of living pain-free and drug-free and, all the things you want in an optimal life. Some people want. Again, I'm not going to speak for everyone. I guess there's someone who doesn't want optimal energy and no allergies and no joint pains and good cardiovascular health. I guess someone doesn't want that. But good blood chemistry, good blood sugar, and all the markers that a 59-year-old looks at. I guess there's someone who doesn't want all that. But I do. And so for me, health, the environment, and a very important one, which is where I started, animal rights and animal suffering, and animal, all of it. The whole experience for these animals is horrific, the drugging, the conditions they're kept in, how they're shipped around. We all see those trucks on the highway, right? In the middle of the winter, you see these trucks go by with the pigs in there, and you're going, I'm fucking cold in my car, and I got the heat on. Holy shit, these poor pigs. So that's the tip of the iceberg. So how the animals are treated, how they are drugged, how they are fed garbage, how they are cannibalized. They are fed other animals, and sometimes fed their own species in a processed form. In fact, one of the things I'm going to talk about today, the H5N1, some of the concern is that these pigs and cows and goats are fed chicken waste. Yeah, literally stuff that's from the bottom of a chicken coop. So feathers and chicken waste, chicken shit, chicken leftover food and grains and bits of rice and wheat kernels and things, whatever the chickens don't eat, all the stuff on the floor of a chicken coop, you do a very minimal sort of processing on to make it approved, and then you can feed it to other animals. It's sick. It's demented, the things that the animal production industry gets away with while none of us are looking, or few of us are looking. So it's a very interesting situation. There was a book over 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago, called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair that gets into a lot of this. 100 years ago, it was shitty. 100 years ago, before these corporations had figured out how to purchase Congress and things like that. So all of those things go into why I eat lower on the food chain. And built into that is quality. So I try to, we happen to live where there's a lot of farm markets and a lot of opportunity to get fresh food. On a good year, we grow a couple of peppers and tomatoes and some eggplants and lettuce. We've grown garlic, potatoes, different herbs. Very lucky, very fortunate. But very many people have a chance to grow. You know, even I have friends with apartment buildings, and they grow a few things out on the patio, the balcony of even an apartment building. So it's about motivation. But I think that's part of what we've got going on too, is eating lower on the food chain and thinking about where your food comes from. And if there's any percent that you could make your own food, you know, quote unquote, grow your own food, then hey, that's great, you know. All right, let me go see if there's any people commenting on. Oh, okay, let me turn up audio. How's that? I got reverb. Let's turn the reverb down. Hey, little slap back. Is that better, Scott? Scott is on Facebook. Let me know if the volume is better. Hey, yeah. How's that? If that is louder and clearer, let me know. I've got some beverages going on here, which we'll talk about. What's this? This is a local company. I said, well, let me try them out. Again, in aluminum. That's always good. And it's a ginger beer, Devil's Foot ginger beer. And I got it because I like simple things. And one thing that never changes for me is I don't want crap. I don't want saccharin or NutraSweet, acesulfame K. Never touch that stuff. Artificial flavors, artificial fat, olestra. You know, I don't talk about that enough, I think, on this show, and discern and delineate the difference between natural foods, natural eating, natural ingredients. It's awfully low. Let me turn this up again a little more. How is that? 1, 2. My thing is, what I'm monitoring on is a little. Oh, let's put some gain on the top of the mic channel too. Yeah, let's get a little bit more and a little bit verb. So natural products. I'm a qualitarian, first of all. I like to see quality, and I encourage people. And I'm consistent. People know this. Even if you're going to eat animal foods, eggs, fish, beef, chicken, turkey, pork, bison. If you're going to eat animals, and that's your choice, I respect that. I'm going to lobby to change your range of choices, you know, so that maybe I want to introduce more choices for you. But I respect your choice. But where I do push always is quality. I want people to look at what they're buying, look at what they're paying for it, look at what it takes to make something be $1.99 a pound on sale. That's fucked up. Cheap meat is never your friend. You know, cheap anything really, but especially animal products, because they're getting away with so much, even on the grade A stuff. So that's the thing. So looking at ingredients is a daily thing for me. So anyway, on this little soda, what did I look? And I said, no, this is simple. It's filtered water, always nice, organic ginger root, regional honey, organic cane sugar, lime juice. It's non-alcoholic, local. I thought, okay, cool. Let's try it out. It's okay. The ginger, man, if you're calling it ginger brew, the ginger got to hit me on the jaw. And it's okay. I don't know. I hate to diss you guys. I hope you all have a really good career. Devil's Foot. I see their drinks around town. But I started drinking this yesterday, left it in the fridge. I don't want to waste it, but not, it's okay. Anyway, we got a couple beverages today, and that's one of them. All right. So I turned up a little bit. Scott, I know you're busy at work, but if you have a minute, let me know if I am better now. I'm going to put another notch on that. See if the volume's a little better. Is this the Love Shack behind me? I think it is, yes. And I'm supposed to be in black and white with the Love Shack. Let me try. Let me try to fix that. There we go. There we go. Now I am in the 50s, where some people are trying to send us back. Send us back to the 50s. There we go. Tin roof. Busted. Is that a lyric? I should know that. Okay, so this is cool. Again, thank you for jumping in on Instagram, those of you who are. Craig, thanks for your question, and hopefully I answered parts of that. Your own health, which it's changed for me over the 40 years. It's these three things, and it changes which percentage for me is number one. My own health, the suffering, the cessation of the suffering of animals. That's where it started for me. I got a book when I was 19. I was like, oh, cows, pigs, they feel pain. They have souls. Their throats are cut. Oh my God, it's a nightmare. So that got me emotionally at first. Loved animals. And then I was 19. Who cares about health, right? But slowly you start reading and studying about cholesterol and steroids and hormones that are fed to animals. You start reading about colon cancer. You start reading about links to heart disease, all kinds of things. And you really start digging into that. So the health and welfare of the animals, health and welfare of yourself. And also very quickly for me, in my early 20s, I was a big environmentalist. I worked in an environmental organization for a couple of years. I've always donated and really always loved things like Friends of the Earth and, all that stuff, ocean preservation, planetary society, and it's always been Nature Conservancy. These are just things I'm remembering that I've got calendars sitting around. I've always, been passionate about this environment, this planet. And the more you get into plant-based diet, vegetarian diet, you start realizing, wow, there's so many connections. Primary is that we use the vast majority of soybeans, wheat, corn. That varies based on the country. But in some countries, the majority of what they grow is to feed animals. And then get the protein from those animals in a very wasteful way, So once you start looking at that stuff and learning about the Dust Bowl in the American Midwest and the rainforest, everyone has heard this shit all their lives. That's what's alarming to me is if you're my age, I'm 59. I've kind of heard everything I just said to you most of my life, right? I've been hearing about the rainforest and all this, and it's not gotten any better. It's at tipping point at this point. So, yeah, thanks for getting me to think about that. Yes, it's a Love Shack lyric. That's right. All right. Tin roof, busted. I haven't heard that song in forever. Good to see you all tagging in here. And if you got some questions, hit me up. Anything at all about the touring with Pat Metheny, tours I've got coming up, which I'm going to announce a little bit. But I'll say real quick, since it's now public, and I was working on this for a few hours today. I'm going to be touring in July with Asia, Martin Turner's version of Wishbone Ash, the trio version of Curved Air, really great early English, early 70s art rock, kind of obscure, but really cool band, trio, and then Focus, the really great Dutch art rock band. Let me put some reverb on so I can. If you don't know who Focus is, I will demonstrate right now. Oh, I wasn't warmed up for that. But you remember that song, right? That was Focus. So touring with them and those other bands in July. In August, touring with Yes and Deep Purple. So, and all of these tours, I'm going to be in a different capacity, which we'll talk about later. Not playing, not teching, but in tour management. And then, so that's August, the 50-year anniversary of Smoke on the Water. The nightmare of every music store employee on a Saturday morning, right? All day, you hear that tune. Enter Sandman. Smells Like Teen Spirit. And a little bit of Stairway to Heaven. I've heard that's tapering off as the generations change. But anyway, 50th anniversary of Smoke on the Water. Great song, great album. Love that album. Very important album for me. My cousin turned me on that album when it came out. I was a kid. And I was like, what? That album and Alice Cooper, Muscle of Love and Killers. I heard all of that around the same time. But anyway, August, Yes and Deep Purple. And then September, a tour with Yes in Japan. So I got a lot of stuff coming up. Going to be really busy. We will talk about that on future streams. I just want to put that out there. Zach, how are you, my friend? Tim Motzer, yes. Jan Ackerman, yes. Zach is asking if Wishbone does anything off in New England anymore. I'm not sure. I will find out. First time working with these guys, so we'll see about that. Okay, let's see if any other questions. By the way, I'm live. My name's Andre Chumley. This is Meatless Monday Meetup. Used to do this every single Monday during the pandemic, at some point during the pandemic. And then life took over and went back to work. And I do it sporadically now. I do it wherever I am sometimes. So I've done it live from Berlin, I think Paris, somewhere in England. Did it last month live from Florida somewhere. So we do this when we can, and it's a lot of fun. And we talk about how to increase your plant-based intake. That's it. I'm not going to yell and scream and everyone go vegetarian. That's unrealistic. And, you catch more flies with sugar or with honey for the vegans, but I think genuinely, though, mathematically, it's very genuine. If one person just skips one meal with meat, just one day a week, the way math works, that's incredible. And so that's the goal. Just get everyone to just think about it a little bit more. And if you could take a Monday, which is, I didn't come up with this, but there's been a long running thing called Meatless Monday, around the world. And if we can get people to just take that one day and say, all right, giving our bodies a break on Monday, even more of a dramatic effect. So that's why I do this show, and we handle different topics. I do interviews. Through the years, I've interviewed restaurateurs, vegan bodybuilders, trainers, a couple of them, plant-based musicians and what their experience is like. I've interviewed in the restaurateur food production. I've interviewed people in Paraguay, Argentina. Same person, but she works in Paraguay and Argentina. I interviewed a guy with a vegan restaurant in was he in Kenya? I'm forgetting at this point. But yeah, Nairobi, Kenya. people with restaurants in New York, New Jersey, California. So, there's a couple I'm forgetting probably, but so that's what the show's about for those of you who have not checked this out. Okay, going back to topics here. Elizabeth, hi, how are you? I'm good, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Um, and you don't sound familiar, but always great when new people have tagged in. Friends with Manny Moreno. Maybe we have Manny as a friend in common. Not sure, but welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Angie, checking in from Spain, right? You live in Spain, right, Angie, or Italy? Remind me. I know you have lived in both, but good to see you. Yeah, see you on tour this fall. But thanks. And I remember your sister brought us some vegan empanadas in um, uh, Argentina. Was it? Yeah, amazing. So Elizabeth, of course, Ronnie's wife. The casa part. I was like, does that sound familiar? But I didn't. The Raven Fire threw me off. So great to see you and hear from you again. Right, Casa threw me off instead of the full name. But how awesome. Yes, of course I remember you. I was there where you got married. I was 6 feet away on stage. These folks got married at a Project Object show on Halloween. You can't beat that shit. All right. Douglas, Alejandro, Ashel, Gianmarco. Hello. So many cool people stopping in. Sandman, Maiko, nice. Daddario, look at that. Wow, what an honor. The Daddario folks who do so much amazing work in my day job. John Horner with a question. Am I vegetarian or vegan? I'm vegan. I'm currently vegan, and I always say I'm vegan because I will consume honey if it's in something. I don't generally use it. Bees are interesting because they're, of course, super important. We could not have many plants that we enjoy as human beings that we live on without pollination of bees and bats and other animals that pollinate at night. But bees are probably the most important pollinating. And bees are interesting because, the strict vegan thing is to have no bee products. And I did that for many years. But I'm also a science-based person. Computer science is what my degree is. I have an associate's degree in computer science, but a lot of science kind of thinking and background. And so I like to approach everything with the facts and the figures, which support a plant-based diet. That's what's interesting. It's like you go full circle. And I love that 40 years after doing this myself, and many people did it for centuries, I love that we're getting even more hardcore science. And you have these programs like these specials looking at the blue zones around the planet, and where some of the people are vegetarian, but they all are much more plant-based than the American diet, than the Western diet. Even if they eat some animals, it's much less than what we do, much higher quality, much more surrounded by vegetables and, nuts, seeds, roots, sea vegetables, things like that. So all to kind of answer your question and say a little bit of the why and how that I'm plant-based. Yeah, and I love that term. That to me, that's a kind of a cooler term that's been used a lot. It's not a new term. I've heard that for decades, but that's the one these days that you see on packages and stuff. And I love it because I want to bring people in, and I know that the word vegan turns people off. It's like gluten-free. There's a lot of jokes and memes, and it goes on and on. So there's a strong backlash. But it seems like plant-based slips it through the door a little bit more for people. But that is correct, John. 40 years, I have not eaten any kind of flesh, any kind of meat, any kind of fish. Other than accidentally, yes, I had a little bite of some pate that was supposed to be olives, and it had chicken liver, chicken or something in it. In Paraguay, I think. The slightest thing. As soon as it touched my tongue, I was like, that feels weird. Kind of spit it out, and I was like, waiter, and it just got lost in translation. It was the one thing I didn't check with our translator, and but it was like an olive pate. But they anyway. But other than things like that, accidental, I'm sure in a Chinese restaurant somewhere there's something like some stock that was, but I'm really, really strict about that stuff and I don't really eat out that much. But yeah, 40 years flesh free. A lot of that vegan. I'm currently vegan in that I don't consume dairy or eggs. But for a couple of years, I did organic eggs, maybe up until for about 5 years, I think. I'm gonna say, yeah, yeah, 4 or 5 years. I feel like 2014 to 2018, something like that. I remember being on tour a lot with Yes, and I kind of said, you know what? They have this great chef. They're traveling with us. They're using organic eggs. I need some protein in the morning. Started having eggs. So I think eggs are a great food. I talk about eggs all the time on this show. They're an excellent food, fantastic food. Organic, clean, drug-free chickens. And one of the things I'm going to segue to quite shortly is the problem we're going through with H5N1. So right now I wouldn't be eating eggs or anything to do with a bird, but on paper they are an excellent food. But unless you're getting them from your backyard, there's an incredible amount of cruelty involved. Incredible amount of cruelty. Chickens are, wow, it is brutal what we do to have chickens. And the fact that the male chickens, for instance, the baby chicks, are generally useless because they're not going to lay eggs. They basically just throw them away. They literally just put them live into the garbage. They just or crush them or exterminate them very quickly and then dispose. And then the egg laying chickens are subjected to some miserable shit. So again, we could do a whole show just on cruelty, and that's not necessarily why I'm here, but just to round out some of the answers to these questions. Harry Whitley, how are you, my friend? Meg Donahue Kelly, how are you? Love back to you, and I love that the Saint is bouncing back. All right, so let's look at some of the questions. Hoping some exciting visuals of me in front of the green screen. Well, I haven't learned how to do green screen on Instagram, but if you jump over to my feed on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube, we're rocking the special effects there. So I don't know how to translate it over. Okay, Harry, Music Musings. Hey, thanks for jumping in. Huna Bravo. Everyone is so cool to see. Yes, Hocus Pocus. Yeah. Yes, and Deep Purple, indeed. Let's see. Alan, how are you, my friend? Just reading how Frank says it was a Steve House solo. I didn't know that. Wow. Send me a link to that. I didn't know that. Mr. Svalgard, how are you, my friend? Sandman says, that's how I build my diet. Primarily plant-based, but I still eat meat, get it from a local farmer, butchered, grass-fed only. I respect your approach, though. As I do yours. And, before I even read your comment, that's kind of what I said, that if people are going to eat flesh, I respect that choice. The only area I push is that we all need to be eating better quality. We got to stop the mainstream giant animal slaughter industries. They are destroying us. They're destroying our water, destroying our soil, destroying our health. And again, the H5N1 virus, which I don't know at what point you call something an outbreak, but I urge everyone to Google H5N1. Just 15 articles will come up. I just read an article today from National Geographic. I've been reading articles in the New York Times and a couple of science websites, a couple of biology websites over the last month, and it's alarming. Biologists, experts, viral experts are alarmed because for the first time, H5N1 is popping up in cows and goats, and there's been a big outbreak in ocean dwelling animals. I think seals. That's why I paused. I was trying to remember exactly what. we'll pull it up in a minute. But if you look this up, you'll see this, and you'll see that they're very concerned because it's not just in birds, and it's now moving into other animals, and there is human infection already. And when there's one, there can't be just one, right? So what's fascinating to me is we didn't do the previous pandemic very well at all on any level, especially in the USA, who's supposed to be the best. We didn't do it well. The way it was handled at first. Oh, it'll be gone by Easter, and drink some bleach. That whole thing. That there's no need to dwell on that. But even beyond that guy, the way our FDA and our drug companies all collude with Congress, and that, all the Congress people who held information back. Remember this? And they bought stocks and different things, and a lot got done wrong. And then the vaccine rollout, there's problems with it. And then you got the conspiracy people who still are at it. Did they make some good points? Absolutely. To me, they were obvious points, like we got to clean up the lobbying system. We got to have more oversight. We got to have more citizen review boards of these types of things. That's kind of obvious, but yeah, they were right about that, I guess. If you can be right about something that's obvious, yeah. But anyway, we don't need to relitigate that whole thing. I'm happy to, but no need to right now. But other than to make the point that we didn't handle it well on every level, right? The food production companies and then us. I think I did as good of a job as I could. I stayed in, and then when it was time to go out, I wore an N95, and I don't sneeze like a fucking 3-year-old, and into my hands. I still see that. I was flying the other day, and grown-ass men sneeze in their hands and touch things. You want to punch someone. Or the people who, I've seen this, people walk in the airport and they go to sneeze and they just turn their head. And they just turn because that part of the world is not them and they're going that way. So who cares? There's people walking through your fucking plume, even if it's just a cold. So you see all those things. And the way people rebelled against, wash your hands. Stop being a fucking pig. I think what happened is people conflated it with control and government control and all that, when it was just common sense. If you've got the sniffles and you're coughing and sneezing and blowing your nose, stay home. How hard is this? So all of those things I think we failed on 4 years ago and since. So I'm very nervous if bird flu is about to be a thing, because we're just not mature enough to do this again. So that's one of the things today, is to just put that on the message board for people. I think a lot of people don't see that this is happening because it's second and third on the news, which is understandable. All right, let's look at some comments. Nina Joe, how are you, my friend? And always good to have some science-based people. I want to interview some of you scientists and come on the show and let's talk about some of this from a biology point of view. Something I want to do more of. So please share your thoughts as a clinician. Remind me, you're a biologist, right? Biochemist. Backing up to some of the questions. Elizabeth, what are some of the highest protein foods that I use? Great question. Number one question for vegetarians, or plant-based people, is protein. Kind of a nonsensical question for us. Like we really get, I'm not saying to you, Elizabeth, you ask it in a very polite way, but some people it's in a kind of a gotcha way. Where do you get your protein? Lately, I've been given the answer, especially people that are around me a lot. Do I look like I need more energy? Do you want this to be more caffeinated? Come on. Clearly, you're insane if you think that humans need animal protein or something goes wrong. Again, not talking to you, Liz. It's the rhetorical people who all as a setup to answer your question. Protein, amino acids, your body will look for these components, these macro nutrients in food and get them. My favorite proteins are things like high quality organic nuts and seeds, pumpkin seeds, really high on the list. Wow, incredible source of protein. Really great for men, great for anyone, but great for men, or as we say today, people with a prostate. So we'll do a whole stream about that if you like. But sure, people with a prostate, um, very good for us. Any kind of good high quality seeds, sesame seeds, hemp seeds. Wow. 3 tablespoons of hemp seeds, which I have in my Silk. Silk is now doing a Greek style yogurt, which is wonderful. It's, I think, 20 grams of protein in a little cup. Fantastic. And you can get the plain with almost no carbs. I take that. I put a couple of tablespoons of hemp seeds, and I have a quick breakfast that's 30 to 40 grams of protein. Fantastic. And unlike any animal protein, it's without cholesterol, without hormones. And you got to remember, with animal protein, you have 2 levels of hormones. You have the hormones that are naturally in a cow, naturally in a chicken, naturally in a pig, and then they feed them other hormones or shoot them up with other hormones. And the more we read about that hormone load in human metabolism and how it connects to various things, hormones are a real issue if you're going to eat them all the time, especially women, or those with ovaries, those with uterus and ovaries and having menses. Why are you eating a bunch of mammalian hormones? It's a real interesting question. If you have a period, why are you eating estradiol, estrogen, progesterone, and all these other hormones that are fed, growth hormones? Something to think about. And with H5N1 in the USA milk supply now, it's in there. That's not, it's happening right now. Why would you fuck around right now with milk and dairy? So those are some of the things. But Elizabeth, so that's a couple protein ideas. Very good high quality seeds, hemp, pumpkin, sesame. Quinoa is a great grain. That's one of the highest protein grains. Tempeh, love tempeh. We just had tempeh for lunch, and I got some pictures somewhere that I put up. Just grilled some tempeh. I had 10 minutes. That's the kind of thing that's great, like fast food. I just cut open a package of tempeh, marinated with a little sesame oil and olive oil with furikake. I think that's how you pronounce it. Japanese spice mix with nori and dulse and sesame seeds and sea salt. What else did I put in there? Some garlic. Just marinated it for just minutes while the grill was heating up. Threw some tempeh on the grill. Tempeh has as much and sometimes a little bit more protein than turkey or chicken. I think an 8-ounce serving is 16 grams of protein. We can look that up, but ounce per ounce, same ounces of chicken, same ounces of turkey, and tempeh, right about the same protein. And depending on the type of tempeh you get, a gram or 2 more. So tempeh is another answer for great protein. A very low processed form of soy. It's just fermented, cracked soybeans, so it's almost no processing, almost none. You literally steam the soybeans and add a culture like you do with cheeses, whether they be plant or animal milk based. The same way you add a culture to make wine or kombucha or sauerkraut or any kind of fermented foods. Tempeh is a fermented food, like miso, anything like that. Other protein sources are some of these kind of meat analog type things, so we get like the, I think it's Beyond Sausage, one of those, whichever one is not GMO, we get that one. And those are fun. Yeah, throw them on the grill. They're great. They're delicious. And while I don't live my life missing meat or wanting to have things imitate meat, It's fun, yeah. Throw a burger on the grill, right? We all grew up with a summertime burgers, and so it's kind of fun. We have those once in a while, but we tend to eat great northern beans, lentils, black beans, dark leafy greens. There's good protein in kale. There's protein in chard, in spinach. Um, so those are some of our protein sources. And I'll say finally nuts, really good nuts, which would be organic again, as fresh as you can. Walnuts, Brazil nuts, um, and almonds. Eat a lot of almonds. So those are some protein sources. But I think in general we worry too much about protein because it's pretty easy to get, but it's very important. But um, people um, wonder about that from time to time. Michael, how are you, Mr. Michael Bernier, who's been on the show? Michael, how about this, huh? This H5N1. Are you checking this out? You've been waiting for the next Evil Dead movie, so I think you have. Nina says, the massive farm factories are an issue. Bird flu is back. Yep, that's a big theme here today. H5N1 is now an issue with wildlife rehabilitation. Exactly. We used to see it in birds and, yeah, not only raccoons, but goats, cows, and humans. At least a couple days ago was one human. You're a scientist. You know there's nothing that's only one once it's crossed species. Eddie, how are you, my friend? Eddie is on YouTube. Good to see you, bro. How are you? How is your plant-based lifestyle? Let me know. And have you heard of the H5N1 outbreak? So I'm going to put my first link. This is a link of a video. I've been watching a couple videos, reading a couple articles, and you know, I hate to use the phrase "the science," but you know, looking for scientists and what they're talking about: biologists, virologists, biochemists, epidemiologists, people in universities who've been working with epidemics for 25 and 30 and 40 years, not Joey in his basement in Long Island with some QAnon secret info. I mean, that's almost worse than the fucking H5N1 that we might have to deal with that guy again. Holy shit. Yeah, Joey in Long Island. Anyway, so there's a link in YouTube, and I'll put it. I'm sorry, it's a YouTube link in Facebook. And Eddie, for you and anyone else on YouTube, I'll put the link in YouTube. There we go. So Mark Wolf Lorana, how are you, my friend? Mark, I came into your restaurant 40 years ago this year. Can you believe that shit? Mark had an amazing vegetarian restaurant in Highland Park, New Jersey. So big part of my life. Okay, let's go back to any other questions. So Sandman, Michael, thanks for that comment. And I encourage what you do. You are mostly primarily plant-based, to use your exact words, great. And when you do eat meat, it's local farmer, grass-fed. I applaud you. I mean, the honest part of me, which I hope is the whole part of me, says that animal is still getting its throat cut, and it's still going through a moment, an existential moment where it may realize it's going to die, and its blood is gurgling out of its throat. And I'm always going to highlight the difference between that and pulling a tomato off of a tree, or getting some green peas off of a plant that will not die. The plant stays living. So I do the yin yang thing. I'm always going to advocate that side of it while also extending respect and saying, I applaud you for taking this all the way to the edge of getting the best quality you can and not buying that cow flesh from the supermarket. Some dirt cheap nonsense that is filled with drugs. And so I do applaud that. And um, you know, I don't pray, but if I did, that's where you'd say a prayer for the animals. So okay. Okay, cool. So let's go back. Really cool being on Instagram and doing this for the first time there and getting some questions. Thank you for jumping in. David Howard, Cesar on bass is here. Cesar is, remember the band Nemegata in Austin, Texas? That name sounds familiar. Man, I don't remember Nemegata though, but I'm gonna make a note of that. And is that your band? I will check that out later on, my friend. Nemegata, there we go. Colombian musical treasures. Yeah, right. You guys were on the crew, right? Yeah, yeah. I checked this out a couple years ago when we worked together, but I forgot. So thank you. I got okay. You got the new album and all this. Great, great. Voces. Nemagato. Quiero llegar. I will check you all out. Songs like Fundo, Cumbia en Marte, El Brinco, Quiero llegar, Ni con palo, ni con bala, Pasos, Aguantaron, Vola colibre, Al final, Dulce. That's a little Italian there. Canto de la Montagna. I love it. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, Sam, man, nice. Your research and development microbiology. There you go. Absolutely right. We predicted this years ago. Wow. So you were talking about this shit. Wow. Yeah, as I watched some videos, I noticed that some of these scientists are saying, "Oh yeah, this is the one we've been tracking for 2 years," because it's no surprise. So as a microbiologist, what's your over under on? Let's say next week this is in 50 humans and it finally becomes a headline. How well will we deal with this in a post-COVID? You know what I mean? Like in some of the stuff I discussed before, how I feel very few people learned anything. Like you still have people who think that the shitty blue mask for painting that you get, 100 of them for $10 at Home Depot, that thin blue mask that's useless except for, I don't know, blowing leaves and you don't want the dust. We still are in a place where people equate that mask with the N95 or N75 or whatever might be in between. And there's no discernment between surgical masks or a T-shirt wrapped around your head. So, what do you think, Sandman? I mean, do we have a chance if there's an announcement of like, look, there's this pathogen that's now in humans? Nina, I'm discussing H5N1. Yeah, that's right. You kind of jumped in a little later, but yes, it's in the which most people don't read, but in the abstract of this webcast, I put a little thing always like, what am I talking about today? And it's the main thing, H5N1. So yes, that's what I'm talking about. And for those, any other of you just tuning in, H5N1 is a form of bird flu, avian flu. Avian flu is something that humans started understanding and studying 100 years ago, 1918, right? That bird flu outbreak, which killed millions of people. And there's been a couple outbreaks ever since, one in the late 50s, one in the late 60s. It's appeared in the 90s in varying forms. What's concerning these experts today on April 29th, 2024, what's concerning them is that it's in an alarming new range of species. Goats, cows, ocean animals, which really is crazy, right? If this shit starts spreading around in the ocean, what the fuck? As usual, humans are to blame for making it worse than it could be. So yes, I'm talking about H5N1. So Sandman, let me see if you. The thing on Instagram is you gotta physically scroll. Craig says common sense is the flower that doesn't grow in everyone's garden. Yes, that's true. Cliff Hines, how are you, man? I loved your throwdown grudge match stuff. That was great. David Howard Music, how are you, my friend? Kiefer. So Kiefer, Yes, a fermented food. I think you probably put that in there when I was talking about fermented food. I wouldn't be messing with it right now while there's H5N1 being found in milk in pretty significant amounts versus the amount of milk that's out there. But in and of itself, kefir, if it's made with absolutely raw organic milk with the culture, yeah, a good food. The thing about things like kefir and yogurt is that they are foods that address the difficulty of digesting milk. You were using a microorganism to do a great deal of digestion of the milk. And that creates a certain texture that's pleasant for humans, a certain aesthetic, a certain mouthfeel. You're taking milk and starting to digest it with a culture. So that's cool. I got no argument with that. Um, the comment I would say that would apply to it is who's doing that? Who's making it from scratch today? Right? Somebody, in some hippie enclave in Vermont or some grandmother in Poland or Romania or somewhere in Pennsylvania. There's people who know how to make kefir all around the world, in Jamaica, and I don't know, anywhere. But most of what we get is a pasteurized milk product. It's usually not organic. There's all these other issues. So that's why I pause and same thing with yogurt. Unless you're making yogurt yourself from raw organic milk, which is probably not a safe thing right now until we get past this outbreak. Unless you're doing that, making it yourself, then it's just dessert. And now that you can do anything with plant-based milks, there is not a dairy product, whether it's heavy cream or condensed milk or, of course, ice cream. That's 40 some years more, 60 years people were doing vegan ice cream. But in terms of really getting to a place where it's mind-blowing and incredible, and there's 15 brands in any supermarket, and all these butters and sour creams, yogurts. We're in a time where using oats, almonds, cashews, coconut, all of these things can be made. And to me, it's like guitar modeling or something. Like there was a time when you were like, yeah, that's kind of close, kind of reminiscent, but it doesn't at all seem like the real thing. We've closed the gap, just like some of this equipment I'm sitting next to, where you can now model a guitar amp and really fool someone in a blindfold test. I think we're there with these things. So that's my comment on things like kefir and things like that. Let's see. The bid preventable measure is to not. That must be a typo. The big preventable measure, not to eat raw milk. Yes, and that's that's exactly the um the recommendations I'm putting forward. And then you answered kefir. Obviously, we're probably off sync here because yes, I know kefir is a cultured milk. That's exactly what I just said. But good that you put it in print for other people who might not know that. But you know, if the tables were turned, I'd be accused of mansplaining. But yes, of course, I know what kefir is, and but like I said, thank you for putting it there in print. Made for a non-raw source is good, although it's not as authentic, right? I mean, if we're really going to be authentic and say kefir from 100 years ago, 300 years ago, they did it with raw milk. Yes, you can make it with non-raw, but then exactly to your point. Once you're not pasteurizing it, you're dealing with these viruses. So which chance do you take, right? Is kind of so to me, it's really simple. We don't need dairy. We don't need milk. We're not cows. We're not goats. This isn't hard. On to the next problem. But what do I know? you know, if I ran things, we wouldn't be talking about H5N1 in the dairy industry because people would not be supporting that. Hormone imbalances are tied to cancers, Sandman says. Yeah, I touched base just a bit on that by lumping it in and saying human disease. But absolutely, I'm reading that more and more as we understand hormones and how they work. which says two things. We should study and learn how to optimize our own hormonal production, optimizing glandular health, kidney health, liver health, optimizing pituitary gland, optimizing just a lot of human systems. We know so much about optimizing them and what foods are great for your thyroid, for instance, what elements we need, and we just sit on our hands. But hormone production is something that could be modulated quite a great deal, and especially with plant-based foods, with herbal foods, with all kinds of methods. But I'm very concerned that people eat so many hormones, without even thinking about it, like it's a joke. And I'm very concerned how many more hormones are fed to animals these days. And so if you're consuming animal products, I hope you take a real good look at that plate or that bowl or that glass and say, yeah, today I'm having 30 or 40 hormones and I'm comfortable with that. That's all. I just want like a real politic kind of a discussion for us to accept what these industries are doing to us, what they're feeding to us, what they're legally allowed to feed these animals, the amount of hormones that they can give to pigs, to cows, to have them grow faster or fatter or all these things. And here it is biting us on the ass again. So thank you for that, Sandman. Hormone imbalance is tied to cancers. Beans, nuts, seeds are great sources of protein, healthy fats. Absolutely, yep. They are within the spectrum of things that I try to consume. Fortunio Rodrigo, how are you? Fortunio Rodrigo. Cormon, I can't say that one. Cormorantare. That's as hard to say as my last name. But good to see you here. Robbo Base. Sandman has an article, but these links don't work, do they? Shit. Good article on soy. I'll check that out. Instagram just slows down the audio, and it's like a fucking acid trip. High Scory says Instagram is like an acid trip. I agree. I respect your opinion respect your opinion for sure. Well, thank you. I respect yours. Big farms need to go. Yep. You're right. It's probably not going to happen. We tend to not do things till it's collapse. And I think shit's going to collapse like it did 4 years ago. It's going to collapse even harder. And things like lab-grown meat are going to go into the breach, go into the gap. And protein sources, things like termites and crickets and stuff like that, which already are, you can go to Whole Foods and get crickets in a powder form. Very high protein insect. Not something I'm attracted to, but in 10 years, I think there'll be much more. And the next thing they'll do is come up with a name for it so that they could slip it by. It'll be called bioprotein or something weird. And it'll start showing up in things, baby formula and, feeding it to other animals that'll be very expensive to eat. So a lot of stuff will change, but only when it's too late, when it collapsed, So Sandman says, no better than COVID, in my opinion. Yeah, so you agree. We're not going to deal with this well. Most likely far worse, because now people actively fight against working for the greater good. I know, it's so sad. Thank you for enabling me to say what's truly on my cynical mind. Yeah, I'm not giving much hope to the way people are going to deal with this. Anti-vax mentality has grown exponentially since COVID. Yeah. And it's funny for people who couldn't explain the word exponentially. Right, but they're going to tell you about science and Bill Gates. What's my favorite Pat tune? How about that? That's a wild card question. That's tough, really tough. I don't know if I have one. But very special and important to me, and he was doing it on this recent tour. Sueño con Mexico. Yeah, Sueño con Mexico. That's a real one of my favorite tunes. The Roots of Coincidence is another one because it's so wild. It's so unpredictable. It's like Nine Inch Nails or some weird electronic shit. And that's from the late '90s when Pat went to see Nine Inch Nails a few times in the '90s. He's a big fan, and he really dug that whole new sound that Nine Inch Nails kind of came up with. So those are, it's so hard though. I would say one of my favorite albums is an album called Quartet by the Pat Metheny Group. And what's special about that is it's one third improv and then a bunch of new tunes. And what's also special is they were on tour, apparently a very long tour. And as they got back to New York area, Pat said, "Hey, the band sounds really good. Do you guys mind if we I know it's been a long tour, but can we just take a rest for a couple days?" I don't know if people went home for a couple days or whatever. But I don't even think so. I think he said I should get the details from him. I think he said, if I remember the interviews, he said something like, "Let's just take 2 days, get some rest, and get the gear into the studio, and let's just hit it. We sound really great. We've been on tour for a couple months. Let's go into the studio. I got a few new tunes. I think Lyle, you had that new tune. They knew there's some stuff." And he said, "Guys, if we can do this, it would be great. Let's go into the studio." And they did. They went in the studio. So you had this band that was all cylinders firing, sounding great. ESP, you get to this level on tour. And then they went into the studio with a few new ideas, and they also improvised and recorded it. And it's a really special album. Nothing like it, I think, in the catalog because of that energy, because of the way it was done. So it's called Quartet, Pat Metheny Group Quartet. I think it's from about, I don't know, 2000, somewhere, maybe 97 or something. Anyway, in that ballpark. But those would be a couple of my favorites, but really difficult. I mean, that is just, that's a tough question. First Circle, I mean, that shit, the Day Trip Tokyo, that trio he had with Christian McBride and Antonio Sanchez. That's a pinnacle of Western music, that live in Japan Metheny trio. I mean, that shit it's just, it's astounding. If you don't know that record, Tokyo Day Trip, it's witchcraft. And then I'll close with one other favorite thing. The first solo on this record, Imaginary Day, which is also a favorite record, has that song I just mentioned, the Nine Inch Nails. But there's a song, the first track, I forget the first track title, but check that out. Imaginary Day, just listen to the first track. And again, it's witchcraft because he's using a fretless nylon string classical guitar. I'll say that again, fretless nylon classical guitar through a fuzz box. So he's getting this otherworldly tone that's very familiar to us because we can kind of hear what's happening. But he plays this solo that is just like the history of bebop with harmonics, with heavy metal and Hendrix notes, and it's all in one. So that would be on my 10 song playlist to go to outer space, Pat Metheny. Yeah. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas. All right, jumping back. Eric Svalgaard says my fave, and I know he's talking about Imaginary Day. Right, Eric? Have you sat and done like a musicology analysis of that first fucking solo? I mean, that is, it's fucked up. We've sat and listened to that album on the road a few times, but you know how it is when you get older and you listen to stuff and you hear it with new ears. Yeah, that first track, that is. Anyway, Zach, you love Letter from Home. That's a great one. Yeah, it's amazing, amazing. Okay, so Elizabeth, well, you got a couple comments here. Thank you, Nina. Thanks again, Nina. You know I always bust your hump, but I love you. You're bringing a science voice to this, which is awesome. I wish more scientists showed up on my shows. But anytime you want to do an interview, that'd be great. Your point about wild species in rehab, we often see head trauma or rabies or distemper in RSV species. Now we're seeing H5N1 in these animals and not neurological diseases associated with traditional viruses. Yeah, that's kind of, I don't understand everything you said there, but I kind of do. I see what you're saying, and that's kind of what I've seen in some of these interviews with these biologists, where they're saying, we're seeing a new level of shit here. We're seeing a new manifestation. And I get concerned when scientists have their brows furrowed. I don't know about y'all, but call me crazy. When I see people who have run epidemiology departments in Minnesota or something like this one guy does, he works in the government now. What's his name? I'll remember in a minute. But when you see these experts who've looked at shit for decades and they're going like this, yeah, this isn't good. Why are we not listening to that? It's here we go again, right? Right now you have more than 20 raccoons in your house right now. Oh man, good for you. That sounds a little scary. What if one of them has some fucked up shit in your house? Wow, I couldn't sleep, but I'm glad you're doing work for science. The good people at Johnson and Johnson are making the kefir. Okay. Not sure what that means. Is that someone you know personally making it from the actual raw milk, or Johnson Johnson, the company, now has kefir? But either way, would love to learn more. Oat milk is pretty good. You know, all of these plant milks, you got to take them one by one. Some of them have a great deal of calcium. Some of them are not that great environmentally. Like right now, almond milk, there's too much almond farming in California, right? That business got too big too fast. Should have been regulated. I'm a fan of regulation if you're dealing with environmental pressures and things like that. So each plant milk we should look at separately. Soy milk is one of the oldest ones, at least as a marketed product. But people were making rice milk centuries ago, right? Leonardo da Vinci was making milk and soup stock out of chickpeas and out of almonds. Almond milk was in 13th century Europe, very popular milk. So plant milk is nothing new. And on this show, many times I've talked about this article, a particular article, but there's many about almond milk in the 1300s. So that's great that you dig oat milk, and I think it's cool that we have these alternatives. Mike Sandman says, I'm a thyroid cancer survivor. Oh man, I'm glad that you're a survivor. Cheers for beating that. And you research this a lot because it's personal. That's great. So you probably have some sea vegetables in your life. If not, that's a lot of good stuff there on kind of cancer detox and good sources of iodine and other minerals. So I'm sure you know about that, but you know, some good Japanese facts and figures there. Endocrine health, yep, least addressed topic in modern medicine, in my opinion. Yeah, it's agreed. You know, if someone said what are the top 5 unaddressed topics, yep, that would go in there for me. Hormonal health, hormonal knowledge, knowing what's going on, and blood health. I'm amazed how that's kind of dropped, because a lot of insurance companies now charge you to do a complete blood assay, which is fucked up. I mean, when I was younger, you just got your blood checked. Now it's like an extra line item. A friend of mine paid $700 a couple of years ago, just, I don't know, because of the plan they had and all that, to get a complete, absolute check of everything in their blood. But that's important, I think, is always a good place to start to see that you might be low in calcium or vitamin D, or what your lipids are like, what different serum cholesterol numbers. So, folks, if you're getting a checkup, always insist on a blood test, and one that shows the average range, like, and so you can look at the chart and see, oh, I'm too high, I'm too low, I'm spot on. To me, that's a no-brainer, right? Your blood tells us so much. Anyway, Street Rat Music. Street Rat says that whole Imaginary Day album is absolutely right. It's just a great record. And I concur with Eric Svagard. It's, Pat has so many records, though. It's so hard to pick a favorite. I mean, the Ornette Coleman album, right? Song X, which came out in re-release, I don't know, 40-year anniversary. It's called Song XX, twice as many tracks. That shit is witchcraft. Ornette Coleman, Donardo Coleman, Charlie Hayden, Pat in a room together. Or the record with Jack DeJohnette and Herbie Hancock. It's a trio record. Herbie does the bass, left-hand bass. That's ridiculous. Where do you stop with this guy? It's just, And then this recent record, which is baritone nylon string, is not to be messed with. I've heard the whole record. That's a pretty cool job bonus that I get to hear Pat Metheny records in completion before the rest of the world. Holy shit. That's worth it right there, right? But no, amazing record, this new record. And the first single is out on Spotify, Apple Music. A wonderful title track called Moon Dial. And once again, what he is doing with kind of a new type of instrument. I mean, it's not normal to have baritone nylon guitars with the tuning that he's doing. So he always finds a way to take something and just go and shift it over to his own little. But yeah, really, as a listener, as a fan, I kind of split my brain and get into a very, very serious mental zone when I'm working for him, which is very heavy and very intense, very focused. So talk about that on some other streams. Getting back to the next pandemic, let's talk about that some more. I'm going to wrap up pretty shortly, but I'm going to share a couple links. Off Ramp, yeah, that's ridiculous record. 1982, the premiere of the guitar synth, right, which pops right in on the first track. Off Ramp is ridiculous. James is on there, and the Bat or Bat Part 2, one of those. It's amazing. Nana Vasconcelos. Wow. Rest in peace, Nana, right? But the production on Off Ramp 2, they push stuff to an incredible level. You listen to that record from 1982 and you kind of go, wow, this is state of the art. There's shit on there. There's production stuff they were doing that's kind of still being optimized because they were using, I can't remember if that was the record plant or that other place in New York. But anyway, don't take me down this rabbit hole because we'll just talk Metheny albums till it's midnight. Greg Dig, how are you? Greg says hi. Are we streaming here on multiple platforms? Street Rap Music asks, yes. This is my first day streaming on, let's see. I always stream on Twitter. I'm not going to call it that other bullshit. Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Always. Done that for years. Today is the world premiere of doing this on Instagram as well. Why not? And it's been worth it. It makes for some weird head angles, but next time I'll do it with the camera straight on. Sam N says, you're a big advocate of full metabolic blood panel, right? I mean, come on. Have you noticed, though, the insurance fuckheads that have taken that off of like the basic chart of what they cover? I don't know if that's across the board, but I've encountered it with my insurance with more than one company. And I had a relative again who recently paid a lot of money to get blood testing, and I was like, that used to be part of the package. Oh man. Sam N also says he's a musical scientist. That's what drives him as well. Yeah, he is. That's a good term. He's asking questions. He's a researcher out in space, going through space, finding out where can music go next. Which solar system can we go to? Which star system? So scientist is a good part of the way to describe Pat because he's always thinking about, like a scientist, he learns and is continually learning the components. What is music? And all of the harmonic language and all of the music theory that that man has in his head, having studied vast amount of not just jazz and American music, but of course, music from around the world. He's studied Indian music and Bartok and all the great European tradition. He has studied a lot of musique concrète and noise music and John Cage and Terry Riley and all kinds of stuff that I think a lot of jazz people do not ever even think about. He checks out Cambodian music. He's bossa nova flows through his veins. Chinese pipa music, lots of Japanese traditional music, koto music. He thinks about the different tuning systems in various types of African music, and we've had some interesting conversations too on speakers and how speakers kind of shut down the whole thing. Once you have a sound that you're trying to make through a speaker instead of right from the instrument, it's a different ball game, and that's a very profound. And that's why, for any of us who've gone to look to watch live music, and it's jazz, for instance, say it's a traditional jazz trio with upright bass, double bass, a drum set, and a saxophone and a piano, let's say. You ain't ever going to get anything to sound like that other than being in that room, right? And everyone knows this, right? When you're sitting in a room, it's a nice jazz quartet with that instrumentation, right? Doesn't it? Because you can't do that. No matter how good the speakers, doesn't matter. It's still a translation of sound. It's very, very good, and we have very, very good ways of doing that, but there's shit happening in the air from those piano notes bouncing and hitting. So I've had some great conversations with him about all that. So this is the kind of stuff he sits around thinking about sometimes, not always. But he's another level thinker and science nerd, and there's a YouTube with him talking to someone about neuroscience, neurotransmitters, and the human brain and creativity. So he's great. It's gratitude and honor to be on the team of this musical force. He's a musical force. It's beyond musician. So thank you for saying that, musical scientist. Will I be involved with the Adrian Belew Beat Tour? Man, Instagram's killing it today with the questions. And Nina, thank you for those links. I'm going to come over to that in a second. It's a good problem to have, but I'm busy in October, November touring with Pat, so I will not be on the Beat Tour. Adrian asked me to do it, and that's a sad day. Sad day when you got to say to Adrian Belew, yeah, I can't. I'm busy. That said, we've been working. In fact, I got to see if he got back to me, because today we're talking about this, about him getting all the sounds and stuff from those King Crimson albums, and I'm working with him on that, and I'm working with Roland, who has some really cool new gear. And Roland is, of course, a company he's worked with for 40 some years. And on that Crimson stuff, just like the Matheny album that just came up, Off Ramp, and Pat in February '82 put that record out. Just a few months before, in September '81, King Crimson put that album out with the GR 300. I'm just reaching over here because sometime later today or tomorrow, I'm going to be going through some of the sounds and some of the programming in this thing. This is the SY1000, a really amazing guitar synth from Roland Boss. And it you can see it's blue like the old, the CR300. They're nodding to that. But it's digital, and it's so it lets you make different patches, but then save them. Those old ones were like analog synths. You had to dial it in every day, or have 3 of them. But yeah, talking to Adrian about how the hell to get those King Crimson sounds, and he's been posting about this. He's been very public about this. He's been posting, and as he searches for some of the exact pedals, some of the Electro Harmonics pedals and things, so he's been doing that. So I won't be on the tour, but kind of doing some stuff from a distance. David Barrett, how are you? You attended the Synclavier workshop Pat did in Toronto '84. Wow, that's great. Well, he still has the Synclavier, that unit. I think he had more than one, but he has the main one, and we're actually trying to get the power supply repaired and some stuff. He's in touch with some of the original people, and as you probably know, one of the original guys was involved in the new Synclavier. There's a desktop version, and it's great. Sounds great. It has a lot of the very unique kind of audio pathways and structural ideas for making sound that the original did. And the app is really good. There's an iOS app. So that's cool. If you're interested in Synclavier for 2024, it's there. Street Rat says, I'll follow on the other platforms. I've learned a lot here in 20 minutes. Oh, that means a lot, man. Thank you. That's very kind. That makes my day. Anyone who says that this inspired them to go do some more research, that's very special to hear. Thank you so much. And yeah, you can find me. The links are actually in my Instagram right now. If you go to MEATLESSMondayMeetup.com, that connects to my Facebook, my YouTube, etc. Wild Soph, how are you? Experimentation, says Sandman. T. Brasher, how's it going? Best you can do is know the sound reverberation, the best mic placement. Yeah, exactly. That's right. You can get close. Pat said most of off ramp was still. Oh yeah, off ramp is 300. Yeah, this thing I just showed you didn't exist, till a few years ago. Oh yeah, off ramp. Any of the synthesis on there is GR300. Okay, back to Facebook for a minute. I have a couple people added some stuff. Nina, there's an article there about the next strain avian flu. Okay, cool. And folks, there's a link in the chat that my biologist friend Nina has put, and it's real-time tracking of the influenza H5N1, because it is a flu, which gives you your first clue right there of oh, this is great because you got a map with some graphics and the nucleotide diversity. That's just what I was hearing in this other interview. This guy was talking about as they look at the genome and how it's how it's changing. That's where things can get some of these guys a little wigged out, because it's changing in such a way that it can thrive in a goat or different types of sea animals, right? Yeah, not good. So thanks for that link. I will read that, Nina. I suggest other folks please read that. As Nina says, you can see how quickly H5N1 is evolving. And we're just going to sit on our hands. Yeah, you're right, Eric. The room sound and how a piano sounds amazing. Dave Miller, good to see you, man. Dave says, too much work after the quarantine is a good thing. Yeah, that is. Are we about to see another quarantine, though, because of this? Great. Yeah, Zach Nelson. That sounds like a T-shirt. It's the Adrian Ballou. Let me get some reverb. It's the Adrian Ballou and avian flu. From Adrian to avian. From Ballou to flu. Only here from the mountains. That's right, folks. It's 4:44 on WFLU, coming to you live from the mountains. I'm Andre Chumley. It is 72 degrees out there, and chance of showers around midnight. Coming up, the new Foghat album. We're going to play it in its entirety here at 6 o'clock on WFLU, of course. Sounds of classic rock, epidemics, and legendary guitar players. We're taking your calls right now if you want to win tickets to the Big Heart Cheap Trick Show coming up next week. Be our 10th caller here on 91.1. All right. It's why it's difficult to build a vaccine. Yeah. Well, because Bill Gates is in control. I know. I can't wait. Can you wait for all that shit? What's funny, though, is all those people, and I know some of them, they're not paying attention now. They're playing Angry Birds or just, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not really into the science. But a month from now, they're going to tell you that it's Soros or it's this or that. When there's been scientists worrying about this for a couple of years, actually, because they're not happy even when it's just in birds. But certainly now that it jumps species. T. Brasher, thanks for the question. Reining me back in. What unit were you using in your modular post the other day? Here on Instagram, it was an older video. It's from 2019 when I performed at the Moog Fest, and I had my little modular system that I built, by which I mean I assembled it using a bunch of different systems, and it's pretty close to the way it is now, but I'm sure it was different 5 years ago by a little bit. But I had there's an oscillator there from Tokyo that's like a Buchla clone. There was a bunch of make noise things in there. There's something called the Mysteron, which does car plus strong synthesis for some of the percussive noises. And then there was I have a pair of drum modules from a company called Erica out of Latvia, up by Finland, Russia. There's a whole synth scene coming out of Latvia. There's all these pedals and synthesizers. So a great company called Erica Synths, and they make these beautiful drum modules that I'm doing the beats with those. Very sculptable modules because you can pick different drums and change the timbre and the tones and the tuning and the envelope, the decay of the drum sounds. So those are 3 or 4 things that I'm using. But I like Make Noise, a lot of their stuff, and I use Pittsburgh Modular. There was a Pittsburgh mixer in that. So that gives a little thing. I got to do more streams on that stuff. All right, well, I am also going to get going. I think I've done what I wanted to do, which is to put the H5N1 into some people's thought patterns, maybe look it up a little bit. We're kind of in trouble. I mean, I'll do a little experiment right here. Let me share. I'm going to share my screen. You won't be able to see this on Instagram, but let's see. Eddie, I'm neglecting Eddie over on Facebook. Eddie says, I'm so glad I never have to explain why I won't try insects again, or incest. A little Freudian slip there. Won't try insects again. Sorry, pal, I'm vegan. That's good. Yeah, I know. We don't want insects. I haven't heard Imaginary Day yet. Oh, dude. Yeah, if you haven't heard that, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Talk about some fuzz tone Pat Metheny. Beautiful record. And it's got the 42 string on it on like the second track. But I'm going to share screen right now as I wrap up, just to do a little experiment. What I'm going to do, and this is only going to be visible on YouTube and things like that. But what I'm doing is I'm going to just punch in H5N1 and see what comes up. So Centers for Disease Control, current situation summary. So that's, I was looking at it before. It's not good. They're not happy. But just to look at kind of mainstream articles, here's some of the top stories. Okay, so the experts are warning at least against drinking raw milk. So they've put one toe in the water. But you know the dairy industry is on the phone right now screaming at them saying, do not spook people about milk. I'll end in this kind of area. And I'm sorry I didn't get to really any of the Jamaican vegan food thing. That sucks. It's so easy to go into a rabbit hole. But I will do that next week. And I think. But I'll close by saying how horrible it is that the dairy industry, we know they're not going to do the right thing, right? We're talking, I don't know how many countless billions of dollars. They're not going to do the right thing. They're not going to protect their workers, who are unfortunately largely undocumented workers. They're not going to do anything. That's what's fucking horrible. That's why you should think twice about supporting the dairy industry. If you're going to eat dairy, this is a time to support local organic farmers, because the mainstream dairy companies really don't care about you. They don't care about their workers. Look at this. There's an article right there. Bird flu cases are likely being missed in dairy workers. Yeah. Do you think big dairy is testing each worker carefully in the morning and the afternoon and giving them all the safety? No, they're not. That's another nice headline. Bird flu kills dolphin in Florida. I said this at the beginning of this show, that what's one of the things alarming scientists is that bird flu is in sea animals now. To be fair, here's another article saying H5N1 is in milk. Here's why the risk to humans is likely low. Okay. I hope you're right, guys. I'll put this article in the Facebook thread. Just U.S. has found virus in milk. Here's why likely it's low. Yeah, they said that before though. So yeah, so this is a combination of I hope they're right, but we also are we just going to go back to normal life, crossing our fingers here? Influenza and envelope virus. So they get into some science here. Looks like a very science-based site. Okay, so they're making the argument that pasteurization is our best bet. They admit that there's not much data specifically on how well pasteurization inactivates H5N1. However, there are studies on pasteurization working in other foods, like in chicken, in a whole egg yolk, and fat-free egg. Blah blah blah. Okay, so all right, here's the jump they make. They say, considering that milk pasteurized at 71 degrees Celsius is held for 15 seconds, and when it's pasteurized at 63, it's held for 30 minutes, there is very good evidence from other foods that the process will inactivate the H5. So it seems like they're hanging it on some hope there. And hey, okay. Approximately 20% of retail milk samples were tested positive for H5N1. 20%. And it's not, there's no warnings, or because they won't do it. The dairy industry will not. They'd love a way that they don't lose a penny with what's coming up here. And you have to think about that, how fucked up that is. Okay, so anyway, I invite you, Google it yourself, pick some articles. There's a New York Times opinion piece. We are blowing the fight to contain bird flu. Wow, that's some heavy language. Look at that headline. This may be our last chance to halt bird flu in humans, and we are blowing it. That's an article 5 days ago. You can't see this on Instagram, but this New York Times article. And it's an opinion piece, so that they label it there. And I read this one the other day, and this guy's using the hard science. His opinion is that we're close to blowing this chance to stop it. And I'm sorry, Zeynep Tufekci. Sorry, if I misgendered this person, I don't know what they prefer to be called, but appears to be a woman. So I'll just say this person, whatever this person chooses. But they are an opinion columnist and very science based. I read this article, and it's yeah, the milk industry kind of writes the script. Wonderful wino, yes. The tip of the iceberg, says Sandman. Even if this version not lethal yet, like Thanos, it's inevitable. Yes, exactly. Anyway, so read that article or any of the articles. I'm not going to endorse one source over the other, but I'm sure you're seeing that there's a widespread range of information you can get, whether it's Forbes, Scientific American, New York Times, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service.gov. So you got every range of people talking about this. There's already a Wikipedia entries from 18 hours ago. You can see what the World Health Organization. And again, let's have a drinking game for the first jackass you hear that. See, this is then they get offended that I call them a jackass. So I guess I'll take that back, but I don't want to because their track record is so bad. But let's. I just try to exercise compassion at all times. So I'll be compassionate for the next debatable human who comes up and starts telling us it's Soros or this or that, or and doesn't recognize how colossally we cause this shit by treating animals the way we do, by feeding them and torturing them and poisoning them the way we do. So anyway, all kinds of articles about this. CBC, which is Canada, I think. Dangerous bird flu is spreading faster and farther than previously. It's been flying under our radar for months, researchers says. Mm-mm. Hey, I hope it's cool, and I hope none of this. I hope it's cool. I hope they do the right thing, catch this in time, and you know, hope this is just a cautionary tale. Bob, oh, thank you, Bob. Bob says to Fetchy, I'm probably butchering the name, is an academic, right? Not a New York Times employee. I know that. Yep. And I was very, I tried to be very clear in saying it's an opinion piece. But also, as you're saying, and we agreed that it's a science-based article. I read the whole article, and so you're saying she's written some things about the pandemic. That I kind of recognize that name. So I must have picked up one or two a few years ago. But and yeah, that's that writer's opinion that yeah, we're close to blowing this, but not far off, right? It sounds pretty rational argument for that. But even without that, I urge everyone read about this, learn about this. It's a time where you can educate yourself, learn the basics, get a little trajectory on how much they know, how long they've been following this. And I think what we didn't do in the recent big pandemic, get a feel for the history here that bird flu is something we have struggled with for quite some time, decades, century at least, in kind of high focus medical expert, biology expert kind of attention. The 1918 avian flu. Certainly there was pandemics and epidemics before that, and you got the Black Death. You got all kinds of viral things that have happened in humanity. Um, but just focusing on the last 106 years to where we've known about this specific pathogen, I urge everyone, just go read about that. Go read about the 1918, read about the one in, and I'm going from memory here, I think there's one in 57, 58, 68. And those killed, I think there's might have been one a little earlier too, between 1918 and 58. And those killed on the order of 1 million people globally. The one in 1918 was tens of millions. It was huge. So it's a good idea to read that stuff and see what they understand about avian flu and how this one is quite an area of concern because of the way it's spreading. Eric, that's your new neighborhood in the background. That's great. Oh, Raymond, you were on Twitch, man. I my bad. I didn't go over and uh, I didn't go over and deal with Twitch. I'm going to just for the closing moments take myself to the beach to remember some beach tranquility. A lot of supporting science for these opinion pieces. Sandman says most people would not understand the science behind it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm an advocate of people should be diving in and reading more science and learning the basics. But then again, I'm biased. I can't think out of my own brain in this aspect. I'm a science nerd. I was subscribing to Discover in 1980 or 82. I was reading, the Planetary Society and all of that shit. And I was in computer school, so I was taking college level, university level physics, biology, chemistry, calculus 1, 2, 3. I got up to calculus 3. I did combinatorics, statistics. So it's tough for me to get out of that box, where I look at things and I do understand the basic language, having passed. It's one thing to take it, but I passed biology in college level. I passed chemistry. I passed physics, and all the math classes. But I still think there's articles written on, a high school level, like they keep the words basic, and I'm just impatient with people that don't just try a little harder and, if you hit a word you don't know, fucking look it up. This isn't hard. So uh, um, I hope there's a little bit more of that this time around. So most people do not know the difference between a bacteria and a virus. Never mind how to replicate. Yeah. That's, yeah, and then that gets into the well, the genus of those two species, and I know there's a lot of difference between the protein shell around them, and I know the prions is a whole other thing, right? Do we still have prions in the game? Because those aren't either one, right? The mad cow organism. There's some crazy shit out there. So, all right, folks. Thanks for being here. H5N1. We will look at some Jamaican food next time. But thank you for being here, and good to be back.